The Minister of International Relations, Ronald, Lamola, says South Africa will continue to call for a two-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side. The statement was echoed by the UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohamed. Lamola met with Dr Amina Mohamed in Pretoria today, and of course you saw even some of those live visuals there from Tel Aviv, as we showed you there during the headlines, as some of the Israelis are marking, just 1 year since that Hamas attack. And I'm not sure if we still have those live visuals there from Tel Aviv as we continue then to monitor the story for us. And speaking to Trent Murray even earlier on, who was telling us that some of the Israelis, for example, are worried about the direction that the country is taking, especially given the fact that this is a country that is now fighting conflicts on a number of fronts. How sustainable is this? This is also top of mind from some of those who are marking this particular day for us. Let's now speak to Sophie Mokoena, SABC News International editor, who's joining us in studio. Sophie, of course, a lot to talk about on a day like this, but you spoke to the UN Deputy Secretary General, Dr Amina Mohamed. It should be frustrating as there is no end in sight to the Middle East conflict.
Yes, indeed, I spoke to her. She met the International Relations Minister, Ronald Lamola, and they spoke about this issue during the opening remarks. And both leaders talking about a need for ceasefire, but also both of them saying that the only lasting solution can be found if both parties are committed to addressing this problem, and also raising concern that the whole region now is engulfed in this tension and also those attacks. Earlier on, just before I came in studio, I saw a report that Yemen has launched ballistic missiles directed at Israel, and you can also expect that perhaps Hezbollah or perhaps Hamas tonight, you can expect a form of action, but also you can't rule out Israel. On the other hand, perhaps tonight they might take a decision to respect the day, but I think this conflict or this tension in the Middle East is far from over. Earlier on, I spoke to the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Dr Amina Mohamed, about this matter. Let's take a listen.
It's a very sobering moment. It's a painful moment for many families and people today in Israel as they remember a year ago the atrocities that were committed by Hamas in taking so many lives, those that are lost and those that have been held hostage. So this is a moment in time where we really have to think deeply about these root causes and how to stop the violence, how to stop the conflict, how to come to the table of peace. And we have many tools and instruments in the United Nations, but we need to be committed to acting upon them and to seeing that there is peace in people's lives. Ultimately, this conflict is landing on the shoulders of women and of children, and it really has to stop.
And you can catch this full interview here on the show just after 7 o'clock, as to hear more of what the UN Deputy Secretary General had to say about what's going on in the Middle East. But Sophie, of course, there were fears that Israel will retaliate after Iran attacked in what they called a retaliatory action. But has there been any response at all from Israel in relation to when it will hit Iran?
We saw the reports from the Middle East this morning that Israel has taken a decision to put that on hold. We are told that behind the scenes, the problem here is that there is a clear indication that Iran has got nuclear capability. And therefore, they have spoken about using all ammunitions that they have to defend Iran. And therefore, there's fear that should that happen, you don't know what is Iran up to. I think even this afternoon, I saw a report that the president of Iran will be visiting the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, on Thursday. And you can see there's this diplomatic shuttle by countries, by diplomats. Something is happening in the Middle East. And I think even weekend, people were saying that there are unconfirmed reports that Iran did make a test of its nuclear capability, and therefore I think right now, particularly those countries, the big ones, are worried. We know that the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, will soon take to the podium addressing the media today about today, and I think he will give an indication in terms of what they know about the reports that there was a nuclear test in the Middle East this weekend, but those reports are not confirmed because even the International Atomic Energy Organization in Vienna, they haven't received or haven't issued a statement to confirm or deny. And as you can see in Tel Aviv behind me, many people converging to commemorate this day.
And speaking to Trent Murray earlier on, as you touch on the people that we can see behind you there, he tells us that, you know, ordinary Israelis are worried about the direction that their country is taking, especially given the fact that right now it's trying to, you know, really just protect them, but also at the same time fight on so many fronts.
You are correct. You can't have so many enemies. You will miss some. And therefore, I think the concerns by ordinary people in Israel are really justified. You don't know what's going to happen, and therefore you don't want to see a situation where many countries are attacking Israel at the same time, because it will be difficult to fend off those attacks unless you get support from your friends like the United States of America. I don't think America will be happy with any serious war in the Middle East at this moment, when they are counting weeks to the elections. And we saw Donald Trump is using this conflict, including the one in Ukraine, that he's the person who can be able to make friends with everybody around the world, and he can stop the war in the Middle East, he can stop the war in Ukraine, but also manage the tension between America and North Korea, including the trade challenges with China. And therefore, this is actually helping Donald Trump. And I think Kamala Harris finds herself on a back foot in terms of how to approach this just few weeks ahead of elections. And I think this is something that America will not support. And that is why I was not surprised when I heard that Israel is intending to pull back, but it's not a complete ceasefire. It's just a pullback for now. We don't know what Israel is up to, because we saw yesterday those attacks continued in Lebanon, in Gaza, and therefore in Syria. But it looks like the world has failed the people of the Middle East.
And speaking about Lebanon and Gaza, there's of course the issue of the humanitarian crisis that is now unfolding there as well.
The issue of the humanitarian crisis has been there for some time. And that is why when you locate the current conflict and the escalation since the 7th of October, you have to look back at many years, how Palestinians have suffered, and by extension the Middle East countries, because of the tension between Palestine and Israel. So the issue of humanitarian crisis has been there. That is why you have those NGOs in Gaza, you have those NGOs in different parts of Palestine. And therefore, that is why people are saying the sad thing is that this didn't start on the 7th of October. It has been there for a long time, and it looks like there's no solution. And when I spoke to the DSG of the United Nations, Dr. Amina Mohamed, she spoke about this problem of many wars on the continent in Africa, including Sudan, DRC tension, and then the Ukraine, and then you have the Middle East, saying that it's time that the leaders really find in themselves that conscious to ensure that there's peace around the world, because people who are suffering at this moment are women and children, the most vulnerable, and therefore you have to find a solution to this. But unfortunately, as you know, that particularly with Israel, they've decided to declare the SG of the UN chief, Antonio Guterres persona non grata. And therefore, how do you go to the Middle East and meet everybody? I think this is something that America in particular, and we will continue to call out America, because America is the only country right now in terms of Israel that can be able to really find a way to stop this conflict by not supplying arms to Israel and pushing Israel to the talks. While on other hand, countries such as Russia, countries such as South Africa with strong relationship with Palestinians, including those in Gaza, push Hamas and everybody to lay down their arms and have this ceasefire so that ordinary people can rebuild, and also you can release those hostages. And I think when I was talking to the SG, the DSG, we were talking about said that women are victims and women are not on the table. Their voices are not there. I mean, you look at Hamas leadership, only men are talking. You look at Israel, only the male generals, the prime minister, men, the minister of defense, men. You look at Iran, you look at Syria, you look at Yemen. So there's no, you know, it's men just fighting for power and position and influence.
All right, Sophie, thank you so much for that update.